Modern homes are built for comfort, not survival. With their dependency on electricity, plumbing, and mass-produced materials, they become surprisingly vulnerable when severe weather strikes. But what if our ancestors had already solved these problems centuries ago? Medieval builders created shelters that withstood hurricanes, blizzards, and floods without any modern technology. In this exploration, you'll discover 7 ingenious medieval shelter methods that could withstand virtually any storm. Techniques so effective they're still standing after 500 plus years, while modern structures fail after mere decades. And at the end, a surprising truth. Medieval builders understood something fundamental about resilience that our modern construction industry has completely forgotten. 1. Cruck Frame construction, the flexible fortress. When we build today, we aim for rigid strength. Medieval builders understood something more profound, the power of controlled flexibility. The Cruck Frame wasn't just a building technique. It was a complete rethinking of how structures respond to wind and weather. Using massive, curved timbers harvested from specially selected trees, these frames created an unbroken arch from ground to roof peak. Unlike modern post and beam construction with its many joints and connection points, the Cruck Frame distributed force along continuous curves. During violent storms, these structures would flex slightly, absorbing and dispersing wind energy rather than resisting it. The building literally moved with the storm instead of fighting against it. Some Cruck frames were designed to allow up to 4 inches of movement during extreme winds without compromising structural integrity. The genius was in the selection of materials. Builders didn't use just any trees. They sought out naturally curved oak or elm that had grown under specific conditions. The grain of these timbers followed the curve, creating natural strength that couldn't be replicated by cutting straight lumber into curved shapes. Some builders would even identify promising trees decades before harvest, gradually training them to grow in the desired curve. The most sophisticated Cruck frames incorporated different wood types for different functions: flexible woods where movement was needed, dense hardwoods where stability was required. The result was a structure that could bend without breaking through centuries of storms. What makes this technique remarkable isn't just that it worked 800 years ago. It's that some of these buildings are still standing today, having survived hundreds of hurricanes and windstorms that have destroyed newer structures around them. For modern homeowners who replace roofs every 20-30 years after storm damage, this medieval approach offers something profound. Structures designed to work with nature's forces rather than futilely opposing them. 2. Turf integration, living armor against elements. Today's buildings fight against nature with synthetic barriers. Medieval builders created something far more ingenious: shelters that used living materials as their shield, a technique that modern green architecture is only beginning to rediscover. Turf integration wasn't simply placing sod on a roof. It was a sophisticated multi-layer system that transformed ordinary structures into weather-resistant fortresses. The process began with a waterproof base layer of birch bark or thin slate. Above this, builders placed a carefully selected mixture of soil, clay, and specific plant species chosen for their root structures and water management properties. Unlike modern green roofs that require irrigation and maintenance, medieval turf systems were self-regulating ecosystems. The plants selected would naturally maintain the optimal moisture level, absorbing excess during rainstorms and retaining critical moisture during dry periods. The dense root networks created a living mesh that held the entire system together through high winds. During winter storms, these living roofs provided remarkable insulation. The soil layer would freeze, creating a solid barrier against heat loss, while the air pockets within the turf layer provided additional insulation. In summer, the same system absorbed solar radiation that would otherwise overheat the structure. The most sophisticated versions included specific herbs and mosses that naturally repelled insects and prevented rot in the underlying timbers. Some Scandinavian examples incorporated selective plant species that would change color to indicate when maintenance was needed, a medieval early warning system These living roofs could last for decades with minimal maintenance, sometimes outliving the original builders. The entire system would evolve over time, becoming more resilient as the plant community established itself. What makes this approach remarkable isn't just its effectiveness against storms, it's the regenerative nature of the protection, a defensive system that actually strengthens itself over time instead of degrading like modern materials. For contemporary homeowners who replace storm-damaged shingles and siding after severe weather, this medieval technique offers a profound alternative, protection that grows stronger, not weaker, with each passing season. 3. Waddle and Daub, the flexible impact absorber. Before drywall, fiberglass, and spray foam insulation, medieval builders developed a wall system so effective against storms that examples still stand after 700 years, a technique that combined flexibility and strength in ways modern construction has largely abandoned. Wattle and Daub wasn't just primitive plastering, it was an engineered composite material that created walls with remarkable properties. The process began with the wattle, a woven lattice of thin, flexible branches, usually hazel, oak, or willow, creating a matrix similar to modern rebar but with crucial differences. Unlike rigid modern wall systems, the wattle framework had calculated flexibility. During high winds or even earthquakes, these walls could flex slightly without cracking. The woven pattern distributed force across the entire wall rather than concentrating it at rigid connection points. The daub, a mixture of clay, sand, animal dung, and fibrous materials like straw or animal hair, wasn't simply applied as a covering. It was worked into and through the wattle framework, creating a true composite where each material compensated for the weaknesses of the other. The clay mixture provided mass and insulation, while the fibrous materials prevented cracking and added tensile strength. The most sophisticated versions used multiple layers with different compositions. The base layer focused on adhesion to the wattle, middle layers provided mass and insulation, and the final layer was formulated for weather resistance and sometimes incorporated lime for water repellency and natural antimicrobial properties. During storms, these walls performed remarkably. They absorbed impact from flying debris without shattering like modern drywall. They dampened sound, reducing the psychological stress of howling winds. They regulated humidity, preventing the internal condensation that plagues many modern homes during weather changes. What makes this system extraordinary isn't just its storm resistance, it's the repairability. Damage from severe weather could be quickly fixed using readily available materials, no specialized components or tools required. Some medieval communities could repair an entire damaged wall section in a single day. For modern homeowners who face costly repairs after storms damage vinyl siding or crack drywall, this medieval technology offers something remarkable. Walls that bend rather than break, and when damaged, can be repaired with materials you could gather from your own property. 4. Thatch Engineering, the hydrophobic roof system. We often think of thatched roofs as primitive and vulnerable, but medieval thatchers created roofing systems with water-repelling properties that modern materials still struggle to match without a single synthetic component. Medieval thatch wasn't just piled plant material. It was a precisely engineered system with sophisticated water management built into its very structure. The process began with material selection. Not just any straw or reed would suffice. Water reed, wheat straw, or rye straw were chosen based on local climate conditions, each with different properties for different challenges. The genius was in the installation technique. Each bundle was placed at specific angles that maximized water shedding while minimizing wind resistance. The bundles weren't simply tied down. They were stitched through with complex patterns that distributed wind force across the entire roof surface. Some advanced techniques used multiple layers with different densities. Denser outer layers for weather protection and looser inner layers for insulation. During heavy rainstorms, properly constructed thatch performed remarkably. The outer layer would shed water while the dense packing prevented any penetration. The natural silica content in materials like water reed created a hydrophobic surface that actually improved with age as the silica content became more concentrated at the surface. In high winds, thatch had a crucial advantage over modern materials. It was both strong and light. While heavy modern roofing can be torn off when wind gets underneath it, the lightweight nature of thatch meant less leverage for the wind to exploit. The stitching patterns were specifically designed to prevent the wind from getting under the edges, a problem that regularly defeats modern shingles. The most sophisticated thatch systems included built-in ventilation channels that prevented condensation, a common failure point in modern roofs. Some regional variations incorporated natural fungicides like certain ferns layered into the thatch to prevent rot and extend lifespan. What makes medieval thatch extraordinary isn't just its effectiveness, it's the longevity. A properly constructed thatched roof could last 40-60 years with minimal maintenance, outlasting many modern roofing materials while performing better in extreme weather. For today's homeowners who replace storm-damaged asphalt shingles every 15 to 20 years, this medieval technology offers something remarkable: a roof system that actually performs better during its second and third decades than when first installed. 5. Dry stone construction, the self-healing barrier. Before concrete foundations and mortared walls, medieval builders perfected a construction technique so resilient it could withstand flooding, ground shifts, and freezing conditions while actually repairing itself during storms. Dry stone construction wasn't simply piling rocks. It was a sophisticated engineering system that created structures with remarkable properties. Using no mortar or binding agents, these walls and foundations relied entirely on precise stone selection, strategic placement, and the physics of friction and gravity. The genius was in the deliberate incorporation of controlled movement. Unlike rigid modern concrete that cracks when the ground shifts, dry stone structures were designed to move slightly, settling back into stable positions. During floods or ground heaving from freeze-thaw cycles, these structures would shift minutely and then resettle, effectively healing themselves. The construction technique required profound understanding of stone properties. Builders selected stones not just for size, but for their friction coefficients and weathering characteristics. The pattern of placement distributed weight and force along predictable paths, creating structures that actually strengthened under pressure rather than weakening. During severe storms, these structures demonstrated remarkable resilience. Floodwaters could flow through the tiny gaps between stones without undermining the structure. Frost could expand in these same gaps without cracking the material. Wind would find no large surface to push against, passing through the small openings while the mass of the stone remained unmoved. The most sophisticated examples included specific drainage patterns built into the structure itself. Some designs incorporated graduated stone sizes that naturally filtered water while maintaining structural integrity, a medieval version of modern drainage engineering. What makes this approach extraordinary isn't just its effectiveness against individual storms, it's the cumulative resilience. Many dry stone structures have stood for 500+ years through thousands of severe weather events that have destroyed countless modern structures around them. For contemporary builders who pour concrete foundations that crack after just a few freeze-thaw cycles, this medieval technology offers something profound: structures that work with natural forces rather than futilely resisting them, becoming stronger, not weaker, with each passing year. 6. Smoke hardening, the invisible shield. Before chemical preservatives and synthetic coatings, medieval builders developed a sophisticated weatherproofing system that transformed ordinary wood into storm-resistant material, using nothing but carefully controlled smoke. Smoke hardening wasn't simply drying wood near fire. It was a precise process that fundamentally altered the cellular structure of timber. The technique began with green wood selected for specific structural purposes. Rather than simply drying it, builders would expose these timbers to specific types of smoke in controlled environments for weeks or even months. The genius was in understanding smoke chemistry before chemistry even existed as a science. Different wood sources for the smoke produced different effects. Resinous woods like pine created water-resistant compounds that penetrated the timber, Hardwoods like oak produced smoke that densified the surface and increased hardness. Some techniques even use specific mineral-rich materials added to the fire to create smoke with additional protective properties. The process didn't just dry the wood, it transformed it. The compounds in the smoke would react with the natural resins and cellulose in the timber, creating new molecular structures more resistant to water, insects, and decay. The smoke particles would fill the microscopic pores in the wood, creating a barrier against moisture while still allowing the timber to breathe. During storms, smoke-hardened wood performed remarkably. It resisted warping from humidity changes. It maintained structural integrity when wet. It dried quickly after exposure to water without the cracking and checking that plague modern lumber. The most sophisticated versions of this technique created timber with different properties at different depths, a water-resistant exterior surrounding a flexible core. Some regional variations produced timbers that would actually darken and harden further when exposed to rain, essentially improving their protective qualities with each storm. What makes this approach extraordinary isn't just its effectiveness, it's the transformation of a vulnerability into a strength. Instead of fighting against wood's natural tendency to interact with moisture, this technique worked with these properties to create a material that responded beneficially to the very conditions that normally cause decay. For modern homeowners who replace rot-damaged wood every few years, this medieval technology offers something remarkable. Timber that not only resists storms but potentially improves with each exposure without a single chemical preservative. 7. Passive ventilation networks, the invisible air manager. Before HVAC systems and electric fans, medieval builders created sophisticated air management systems that prevented storm damage while maintaining comfort, using nothing but architectural design and an understanding of physics. Medieval passive ventilation wasn't just random roof holes. It was an integrated network of strategically placed openings, channels, and chambers that controlled air movement throughout the structure. The system began with understanding prevailing wind patterns and seasonal variations specific to each building site. The genius was in creating a self-regulating system that responded to external conditions without any moving parts or controls. During storms, these ventilation networks prevented the pressure differentials that often damage modern buildings. When high winds create low pressure above a modern roof, the higher pressure inside can literally push the roof upward. Medieval ventilation systems automatically equalized these pressures. The design incorporated multiple elements working together. Low inlet vents and high outlet vents created natural convection currents. Narrowing channels accelerated or slowed air movement based on Bernoulli principles. Thermal masses stored and released heat to drive air circulation when wind was absent. During severe weather, these systems demonstrated remarkable functionality. They prevented the moisture buildup that leads to mold and rot in modern sealed buildings. They reduced structural stress from wind pressure. They maintained air quality even when occupants couldn't open windows or doors. The most sophisticated examples included seasonal adjustment features, openings that could be reconfigured for summer cooling or winter heat retention. Some incorporated filtering elements like water features that would clean and humidify air during dry conditions or remove moisture during humid periods. What makes this approach extraordinary isn't just its effectiveness during storms. It's the complete elimination of dependency. These systems required no power, no replacement parts, and minimal maintenance, continuing to function through centuries of use. For modern homeowners who lose ventilation when storms knock out power, this medieval technology offers something profound: climate management that never fails, never needs replacement, and works better during emergencies than under normal conditions. The forgotten wisdom. We often view medieval construction as primitive and limited. Medieval builders didn't just create structures. They developed integrated systems that worked with available materials and natural processes. They didn't fight against environmental forces. They designed with them. Every technique we've explored reflects a deeper understanding of resilience that modern construction has often sacrificed for convenience or cost. They didn't separate the building from its environment or its occupants. Each structure, was part of a larger system that included the landscape, climate patterns, and human behaviors. This wasn't primitive limitation. It was sophisticated systems thinking centuries before we had a name for it. Today, we've traded resilience for convenience. We've exchanged adaptability for standardization. We've replaced regenerative materials with disposable ones. And in doing so, we've created shelters that often fail precisely when we need them most, during severe weather. The most powerful medieval shelter innovation wasn't any specific technique. It was their integrated approach to resilience. Nothing was designed in isolation. Everything had multiple functions. Systems worked together rather than competing. This wasn't primitive necessity. It was brilliant design that modern architecture is only beginning to rediscover. So the question isn't whether these medieval techniques still work. Many have been continuously working for centuries. The question is whether we're humble enough to learn from those we've been taught to view as technologically inferior. Because in a world of increasingly unpredictable weather, the most dangerous storm damage might be to our modern arrogance. The belief that newer always means better, especially when it comes to weathering the storm.